Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so thrilled that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Ghana, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Chris Tamasi. He is celebrating his brand new picture book called Borders. Before we invite Chris in, we want to let you know that we have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read. What Does a Caterpillar Do? By David MacArthur. We love this book. This is a really fun book that will have kids laughing, shouting, and beginning to believe that they can read. The book begins in a garden at night. Readers are asked, does a caterpillar light our way at night? The answer comes in big, bold letters. No! A firefly lights our way at night. That's the simply brilliant format that makes this book so much fun. As kids meet a spider, a silkworm, a cricket, they'll quickly catch on that their job is to laugh and shout no to every question. This is a delightful book the kids will want to read over and over and over again. And thanks to the interactive nature of the book, they will quickly begin to develop the confidence that they can learn how to read. And the book's beautiful, colorful illustrations by Lucy Rogers will captivate kids' attention. Each illustration is filled with rich details that will make each reading feel like a new experience. This is a great book to take a picture walk through. It really is. Now, the fact that the profits from sales of this book will benefit the Victoria Child Abuse and Prevention and Counseling Center is one more reason to add this book to your family library. What Does a Caterpillar Do? Is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can also ask your independent bookshop to order it for you. Our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read, What Does a Caterpillar Do? By David MacArthur. Check it out today. Joining us right now from the beautiful city of Philadelphia, he is the author of a great new children's picture book called Borders. Please welcome to the show, Chris Tamasi. Chris, how are you?
Jed, I'm doing fantastic. I'm super excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to join the podcast. Thanks so much.
I'm really excited. I was excited to have you on about the book, but I was really excited to find out that we were neighbors for a long time.
That's right. Proud to say that I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, back in Massachusetts, not far from where the Reading with the Kids podcast studio is. So it's awesome to connect with a fellow Massachusetts native.
There you go. Now, Borders, you're not talking about border collies.
I'm not, no.
Tell us about this book.
Yeah, so Borders really started while I was on a cross-country flight, looking at a flight map and really pondering the lines, the invisible lines across our country and our world, and the roles that they've come to play in our world today. And I think even to take a further step back, I've always really appreciated the way that children really approach things, always asking why. And I guess I had a little bit of a moment like that myself, looking at the border and asking why it looks the way that it does. And that's really the moment that Borders was born. I'd written a draft on the plane that day, and over the course of the next couple of years, kind of brought that story to life.
Yeah. It is interesting, that this concept of borders and the idea that whoever it was that drew this imaginary line on a map that unites people together and excludes other people. I was just mentioning to you, your new home of Philadelphia, that you have a lot more in common with the folks in South Jersey than you do with the folks in Pittsburgh and Harrisburg. So it would have made more of a sense to put a line around that area there.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the map is always a fun exercise for me, and certainly sparked that childlike curiosity in staring at the flight map. And in in thinking through it, the premise of the story really came to life. What if kids were in charge of making the map? And that is, how Borders starts off and really plays through that idea over the course of the story for individuals to really think about ways that we could reimagine our world for the better.
I know that we're going to challenge kids to think about that, but since you've spent so much time thinking about it, how would you, if you were 9-year-old Chris, 10-year-old Chris, if you were your age right now, Chris, and someone handed you a magic wand or a magic marker, how would you redraw the map?
Yeah. I think the outline is fine. I think the outline makes sense to me. We're all sharing, one body of land. But that's what I would love for young kids to think about, and even adults. I think the message of the story really transcends all ages and challenge us to really think about, at its core, what purposes, these invisible lines actually serve in our society. I'm sure there's a legitimate answer to that, but I choose to live in the creative realm and thinking about what that would look like. And there's even a line in the story, would town lines be jagged, curvy, or straight? Who knows just what the kids would create. And I'd like to think that we could have, funnier looking state lines than we have now. And, it'd be fine for us all to kind of, share and be unified as one.
Yeah. It's funny, town lines, just took a ride, because we can't really get out and socialize. And we can't go out to restaurants anymore. So what my wife and I have been doing lately, we've been taking these long road trips in Massachusetts. And the neat thing about Massachusetts, you can drive like pretty much the whole state in a day. And we went up to the Gloucester, Cape Ann area, and it was a beautiful ride right along the coast. But I got completely baffled because we started in Gloucester and we started heading north up into Rockport, and we drove all the way through Rockport on the same highway, and then all of a sudden we entered Gloucester again. And I'm like, how is this working? What happened here?
Yeah, it's funny how it's all come to be in both town level, state level, and in the world. It's something I think worth pondering, and also just rethinking as these young kids become the future leaders of our world.
Now, I don't know. I do know one of the things that Borders tends to do is to bring people together, kind of like in an artificial way. Hey, we all live within these borders here, so we're all part of this team. And most kids go to the same public high school, and they have a rivalry with the neighboring town, at least here in Massachusetts. There are good things about that. There's also bad things about that. What's your take on that?
I think if you're talking at the town rivalry level, I think there's a playful undertone to that, right? I certainly grew up playing sports as a kid, played baseball, football, and always loved playing that. I think when I was really young, Canton versus Stoughton, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, the message of this story isn't actually as much of like making a point, as much of just recognizing and challenging readers to really just ask the question why the world looks the way that it does. And I think you can carry that mindset into everything we do. And as you grow up, the other things that you focused on, just constantly thinking about, is this the best way to be doing things? Is there a better way? What is the result of the way that it is now, and what impact has that had on those that it's set out to benefit? So I'd say like it moves further away from any type of definitive point. It really was just born in that moment of looking at the map and asking, what would the world look like if kids were in charge? And perhaps they'd ask those questions that we don't think are worth asking anymore.
Yeah. It's interesting as you're speaking, I had a flashback almost 100 years ago when I was a kid, and hearing my family and my teachers when I was asking why, and hearing them say, because that's the way it is. That's just the way it is. And I hope I didn't say that to my kids when they were growing up, but I have a feeling I probably went back on it. Getting kids to think about that and to go beyond, that's it's challenging for a parent. I think it's very valuable for a kid, but I think it's challenging for a parent to say to you, to not have that crutch to fall back on. Well, that's just the way it is. We just got to deal with it.
Yeah.
What do you think about the parent who's listening to this, going, "Oh man, I don't want to open up that can of worms"?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I think being a parent is one of the most challenging things that I just respect, especially now. For all those listening at home who are dealing with virtual learning and having their kids out of school over the holidays, my heart certainly goes out to you, because this has definitely brought on new challenges. So I could understand why the constant asking of why on top of a virtual classroom could be a bit annoying at day's end. But again, I think conceptually thinking about that childlike curiosity, right? It's brilliant. And it's a moment that I think as we become older, we're looked at, in a way that we're expected to have all the answers. And I think growing up, I have, always thought that your parents are all knowing, right? But at the end of the day, whether you're old or young, you're just trying to figure out life and find those answers. So I think it's totally okay for parents to relinquish themselves from that all-knowing power, and trying to answer every question. But maybe, it's like, that's a great question. I actually don't know why it is the way it is. Like, why don't we figure it out? Or, why don't you figure it out and kind of start to get those problem-solving sparks going early. And maybe even altering the perspective of young kids that, like, you are expected to have all the answers, because we know that is not true.
Right. Yeah. And not only is it okay for parents to relinquish that pedestal that we're often put up on, our kids put us up on that pedestal. I encourage young parents to jump off that pedestal as soon as you can. The minute that you have the first opportunity to let your kids know, I don't know, and let them know that you're not perfect, take it, because it makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah. And, couldn't agree more, Jed.
Yeah. Have you always dreamed about becoming a children's author?
I have. It more so got a bit more serious when I got to college, but I actually started rhyming as early as middle school. So I went to middle school in Canton, Mass, and I often helped my friends with poems. So I had a innate ability to rhyme, came to me fairly easily. I learned how to play piano at a pretty elementary degree, I would say. But in putting those chords together, I was also writing songs, within meter, and not really knowing that I was doing that. So I always was drawn towards writing. I was always drawn towards rhyming. And then when I got to school, I went to Amherst College out in Western Mass, and was really struggling to find myself as an academic and figuring out, what my passions were. I think I had this false idea if I wanted to get into business, I had a major in some type of business related coursework, but it really wasn't what I was passionate about, and it wasn't something that really catered to my skill set. So when I went all in on writing, I really just dove into poetry. I actually had a professor who was my freshman year advisor who was well studied in children's literature, and I studied archival literature with a couple fellowships at Amherst College. I took poetry classes, both reading and writing, and it was then where at my senior year, I ended up writing a manuscript for a children's book, which I think today is more of an epic poem, but that was not the one that got published. But it was a really enjoyable project working one-on-one with the poet in residence at the time, Daniel Hall. And it was there really where my dreams became, a sense of, reality, really, that it was attainable. And leaving Amherst was always something that I wanted to do. So I'm really happy at this point, 5-6 years later, that I'm able to bring it to life.
Yeah, that's fascinating. My dad was into poetry and read it and tried to get me into it. And, beyond there once was a man from Nantucket, I just, it's not something that I could relate to. It might have been the knucklehead in me growing up in the inner city with like, oh no, you can't, you keep poetry, it's not for guys and all that kind of stuff. What would you say, what advice would you give to a parent who has a kid who is interested in poetry, but there's something that's holding them back from going all in?
Yeah, I would say, just push them to get started in whatever form that looks like. It can, there's plenty of literature out there, as I'm sure have come through this podcast, reading with your kids, that is written in some type of, poetic verse, and, starting to, introduce that into their life at an early age, I think would only kind of leave that impact from there on out. But as far as like, I'm not sure the direction of the question, but if it's like, if it's something like, is this cool? Is it not? I think it's one of the most beautiful things in the world. It's a form of expression. It is something that, sort of can be very upfront with meaning, but also have deeper meaning beneath that, and has always been an easy code for me to crack. And if that goes for anything, whether it's poetry, whether it's math, whether it's, science, if it's something that you notice a spark in your child, then I would hope that any parent would support that pursuit. Interesting.
Yeah. One of the things I recently became aware of, and it blows my mind. We've had a couple of authors on who have written middle grade novels in verse and young adult novels in verse. You were mentioning that you wrote this epic poem that you thought was going to be your first children's book when you were at Amherst. Is writing a longer middle grade work or YA work, is that something that's on your radar?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see, Jed. I guess my writing process has always been not to like say, you know what, there's a topic, I'm going to write something on that topic. It's really something that is brewing inside of me for a bit. And then, when I feel like it's the right time, it usually comes out in a way that makes sense to me and I think is worth sharing. And certainly I think it's a timely message here with Borders to share that with the world. With that story in particular that I wrote in college, I think it's on the fence. It could be maybe shrunk to a younger age children's book, or it could be expanded out into a young reader's title, which I think is a compelling idea and one that I may pursue in time. But I have no plans in the near term to go for book number 2. But it's something that I continue to like. I would like to continue to do.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you were mentioning is that you're considering getting into business as in college. Were you surprised to find out that once your book was published that you became the CEO of your business, your Borders business?
Yeah. It's been a great experience really bringing the book to life from the ground up, right? I think any writer can attest to that feeling where you put words down on a page and you can only dream of the day that, there's illustrations alongside those words and, that book is in the hands of young children. And, I guess I never viewed Borders through the business lens. Success for me is really just having, people who are listening to this podcast and parents, reading with their kids, right? It's a really, special thing to me. But it has been fun, like building my own website, Tamasi.com, promoting things on Instagram. It's been a nice addition to who I am as a person. I do, work full time, but I also am an author on the side, and it's a great way to fill my time and pursue something that I'm passionate alongside, my everyday pursuits, which I'm also passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You were mentioning earlier that there's a great little activity that you think older kids and families reading the book would really get a lot of fun with. Can you talk a little bit about that activity?
Yeah. So if you remember from the start of our podcast, I was talking about the impetus for the story and, how we came up with the idea through the lens of, what if kids were in charge of making the map, right? So we play that idea out over the course of Borders, but we sort of end with a call to action. Go ahead. I'm tired of asking who, what, and why. Pick up your pen and give it a try. And I'm hoping that call to action for parents listening to this podcast is an opportunity to sit down with your kid and really think about and challenge them to draw, as crazy and zany as it may come out, what the world would look like. And a way to do that is maybe printing out an outline of North America or the United States or South America, Europe and beyond. We have the opportunity to print out those continents and really just fill them in with the lines as we imagine it. And it could really look however you'd like. And if you come up with some fun creations, you can certainly share them with my Instagram account. I'm happy to feature them there. But I just think it's not only a fun way to kind of extend your time with Borders, but it's also an opportunity to flip that switch of creativity on in your child to really push the limits, ask that question, why things are the way they are, and think about ways that we can unify, come together, and achieve collective goals. And I think that's a message that hopefully will resonate for the rest of their life.
Yeah, just as you're speaking, I'm thinking this is a wonderful way for families to sit down and to use the magic Google or Bing or whatever kind of search engine you use, and start to really dive in and look at what customs are like in different parts of the world. What, to help kids and families have that conversation, to understand that there is a world outside of their little neighborhood, their little town, that there are other people and there are different languages and different customs and cultures, and they're all beautiful and they can all contribute. And how can we work to get along? So I think it can be a really, really fun activity for a family to get involved in.
Yeah, and I would love to see it. As I mentioned, it's something that I had always envisioned going along with the story and further, allowing readers the opportunity to be creative alongside their parents. I think it's a fun way to come together.
Yeah, and parents, Chris can probably relate to this. When he was a little kid, if he had Larry Bird or Pedro Martinez, if one of the sports stars in Boston had just noticed him and given him a high five, he would have been thrilled. Right now you have a chance, Chris invited you, if you and your kids create your own map and draw your own borders, you can post that on social media and tag Chris, and he's going to acknowledge that. And just think how excited your kid is going to be when the author of his or her favorite book recognizes his work and gives a shout out. That would be real exciting, I think.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to. You can follow me at chris.tamasi, Tamasi, on not LinkedIn, but on Instagram. Yeah. And you can also shout me out on Twitter as well, Chris_Tamasi. And there's no right answers, right? It's an opportunity just to let your child run wild and have them come up with something special.
Yeah. And remind everybody again, your newly developed website. What address is that, please?
Yep. So that is actually christamasi.com. So I'm keeping things pretty consistent across the board. Just my name, www.christamasi.com. And that's a great opportunity to even get a signed copy dedicated to your kid. I'm happy to do that as well.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Borders, Chris Tamasi. Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining us today.
Jed, really appreciate your time. Excited to be here, and I hope you have a very happy holiday.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Nancy Chen. She'll be here to celebrate a great new book coming from our friends at Familius. It's called 101 Uses for Cinnamon. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Earlier, you heard us announce that David MacArthur's What Does a Caterpillar Do is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. If you are the author of fantastic children's books, you're going to want to check out our certified great read program. It is a wonderful way that can help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. It's especially useful right now when the usual ways for authors to market their books, school visits, daycare visits, library visits, book signings, they're just not available in this time of pandemic. So check it out today. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Authors Click Here button. Scroll down to Certified Great Read. It's a really wonderful program, and I think it can really make a difference in the marketing of your book. Hey, want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, want to thank our friend, our guest, Chris Tamasi. Be sure to check out Borders. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you for connecting with us on Facebook, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, on Twitter @MagicJedley, and on Instagram @readingwithyourkids.com. But most of all, thank you so very much for making the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.